In this video, we're going to talk just a little bit about the psychology behind social engineering. What are the factors about people and the way the human mind works? And we're not going super in depth. Again, I wish I could have a whole class all about social engineering and all of the different components of it. But we're going to have to cover it pretty broadly in terms of what are the factors and what are the psychological factors about people that make them fall victim to social engineering so easily. And it starts with these basic instincts. These instincts are kind of what drive our decisions and the things that we do every single day. So first of all, we have a trust bias. We, by default, trust people for the most part. Now, depending on who you are, depending on your life circumstances, that might vary a little bit. But for the most part, we take things people say at face value. And that comes to be a problem when people are lying to us. And this is something that they find in deception research when they're studying how well people detect lies. It comes down to most people have that bias to trust or to believe people's stories and to believe what people say. We also have a bias and a human instinct to help people. And this is what makes society work, right? We help each other out and we look out for each other and we try to do our best, especially if it's minimally inconvenient for us. We do our best to not let other people fall down if we can help it. So we have that instinct to help. And then, so when a social engineer comes along and says, hey, I really need this report and I really, if I don't do this, if I don't get this done, I'm going to lose my job and everything's going to be terrible. We want to help because we hope that if we were in the same situation, others would help us as well. We want to be liked. We want other people to like us and we want to like other people. And of course, greed is a motivator as well. Just pure selfish greed. We want money, we want opportunities, we want favors, we want all sorts of stuff. And what causes social engineering to be so effective is very often related to the concept of thinking fast and slow. And this is a book by Daniel Kahneman, who is now a Nobel Prize winner, and it's based on his, decades of research and his colleague Amos Tversky's decades of research on psychology and behavior and how decision making happens. And what it really comes down to is there's too much for us to think about. There's too many decisions for us to make every day. So we establish routines and we establish just kind of basic things that we do by default. And we make a lot of our decisions and we do a lot of the things that we do by default, because if we didn't, we'd sit around all day wondering what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And so we need to establish these things. And then we use heuristics or kind of snap judgments to make decisions. And we do this, again, all the time because there's too many decisions for us to make to sit around and analyze every single one of them all the time. And then other things come in like distractions that keep us on that fast path of thinking where we're snap judgments, making decisions, using those heuristics. And they're not always bad. Heuristics are most often good. The problem is when they're not. And when these heuristics are misapplied, then they get us into trouble. And so it's staying on that fast path of thinking and not going through the slow analytical process that leads us to trouble with social engineering and potentially trouble with a lot of things. But again, it's not that the fast path is bad. It's necessary and very much useful, probably 95% of the time. It's just that there are edge cases where we apply the same heuristics and snap judgments and routines and that fast thinking when it shouldn't be applied. So if someone calls us and they catch us in the wrong moment and we're distracted and we're not thinking clearly and they say, hey, can I just have your password? I need to do this check. And you're not thinking about it and you're just kind of absorbed in something else, then that gets done because of those human instincts and because of those heuristics. So we've got all of these kind of mental processes going on. And then social engineers take advantage of these. So they know the way that we think and they know that we have these base instincts to like, to be liked, to trust. Greed is another one, and there's others as well. So taking those, social engineers exploit that and use other components of the way that we think and other components of our decision making to exploit those. And one of those processes is fear. We have fear. And if you could appeal to fear in some way, most often it's not fear of monsters. I have little kids, so that's the fear that I'm used to dealing with every day is there's monsters, or I'm afraid to go to sleep, or if I close my eyes, I think of scary things. Well, those don't work super well on grown-ups. Sometimes they do. But there are other things. There's appeals to authority kind of falls under this fear component where it's the police, or it's your boss, or your boss's boss, or your boss's boss's boss, or the IRS calls and they say, hey, we found an issue. It's not actually the IRS. They claim to be the IRS and say, hey, we found an issue with your most recent tax return and we're going to need you to send us 50 iTunes gift cards for $10. And as ridiculous as that sounds, it happens. It happens. And people fall victim to this stuff because of fear. And when that fear gets activated, they don't think clearly and they're not analyzing and they're not looking the way that they should. If I've had experiences, or not personal experiences, but I've had students come to me and say, I've gotten fake calls from immigration that they found issues with my visa, or they found issues and something's happened and I need to do these things or pay these fees or whatever, or I'm going to lose my status and I'm going to have to leave the country. Well, that's preying on fear and preying on the authority that immigration services provides. So that's an example. So not all appeals to authority are based on that fear, but a lot of times they are. Another one is just pure intimidation, whether it's raising the stakes and saying, I'm going to fire you, or you're going to lose your job, or I'm going to come after you with everything I have. And some of that intimidation ties into fear as well. Another one is urgency, and this is a big, big, big one. And urgency, it's really easy to think of urgency as they call and they say, you have to do this right now, and they get angry, and combining it with an emotional or a fear appeal as well, saying, you have to do this right now, or I'm your boss, or I'm your boss's secretary, or I'm your boss's boss's secretary, or I'm your boss's boss's employee, and they called me and they said I need to do this and you need to help me, or I'm going to come after you and you're going to lose your job and you have to do it right now. Sometimes that works, but sometimes that activates more thinking. Another common one, and one that activates kind of a different pathway, it's still in the lines of urgency, but it's not in the lines of you have to do this now or I'm coming after you. It's not a fear appeal necessarily, but they just say, hey, combining it with that desire to help others. So if they say, hey, I've got to go pick up my daughter, can you help me out real quick? I've got about 10 minutes before I have to leave and I have to go get this taken care of. I just really need to get this done before I go, and could you help me out? And that activates that urgency, and so that fast path thinking again, without activating the fear and without activating the critical thinking. It's activating instead our desire to help, and we're saying, oh yeah, well sure, I can help you out. I'm trying to help you out. I like you, and let's get this done. And then another one, if I don't get this done, I'm going to lose my job. Again, activating that need to help along with the urgency. And this quote, the moment I'm pulled over, I figure I've got 3 minutes to become their friend, comes from Am Trekker, who's an experienced social engineer. And basically, this is referring to cop pulls you over. How do you get out of a ticket? You got 3 minutes to become their friend, because if they're your friend, they're not going to give you a ticket. So, you have to kind of overcome that initial barrier. And that comes into one of the other kind of emotional components of these is just familiarity and liking. So people want others to like them. Like we said, I want people to like me. And so if there's something I can do to get them to like me, if I can help them out in some way and they'll like me more, or I feel that they'll like me more, then I'm more likely to help them out. And then trust, like I said, is one of the biggest components. People want to trust, and people want to be trusted. And so there's a lot of things, and all the stuff that we talk about with pretexting and credibility and all of these things really comes down to building trust Because if people believe you are who you say you are, then they're more likely to help you. If people believe that you really have this need, then they're more likely to help you. If they believe the pretext that you're giving them and all of the things that you do, name dropping and server name dropping and all of the things that a social engineer does to establish credibility and establish that they are really who they say they are, is all to build up that trust, because if I trust someone, then I'm more likely to help them. And then confidence is a big component of that. So the other video shows examples of acting like you belong. And really it comes down to if you can convince them and show that confidence. And if you're really demonstrating that you know what you're doing and that you really belong there, then you can get away with a lot of stuff as a social engineer. And so those are some of the emotional and psychological processes that go into people falling victim to social engineering.